Whether due to a big misunderstanding thanks to the uncertainty of an unreliable narrator, or the true disposition of someone being kept secret until the perfect moment, usually at the end. You may have rooted against these 10 movie characters at one point, only to find that they were actually one of the good ones from the very start. So I am Gareth, this is What Culture, and here are 10 bad guy movie characters who were actually good all along. Number 10, Bruno Encanto. Even if you've never even watched Encanto before, chances are that you know we don't talk about Bruno. That song was everywhere when the film released, in the same way as Let It Go from a decade earlier. Oh boy, I feel old. And while certainly ridiculously catchy, it served an important plot point of the story too. It was clear from the very beginning when Mirabel ran through the members of her magical family that Bruno was shunned by everyone, including his own mother, and was no longer living in the house. His power of foresight was not taken too kindly by either his relatives or those in the village. Whenever Bruno would give a premonition that foretold of something bad happening, he was then blamed when the bad thing happened. Even something like going bald or getting fat, that's not Bruno's fault. But it was more of a shoot the messenger situation, to be honest. Then, when he had a troubling vision surrounding Mirabel and the miracle, he left in order to protect her. The big twist of the film is that Bruno never actually left. Mirabel found him and brought him back to the family after working together with him to save the miracle that granted the Madrigal family their gifts. Bruno was then finally welcomed back, as he never should have been cast out in the first place. Now I want to know really quickly, what is the greatest Disney animated movie of all time in your opinion? Is it Encanto or something else? You let me know in the comments section down below. Number 9, The Silver Surfer, Fantastic Four, Rise of the Silver Surfer. The movie wasn't received with a huge amount of fanfare, but Norrin Radd is widely regarded as one of its best aspects. His initial story went the way any fan of the comics would expect, with the chrome-plated being acting as the herald of Galactus, leading the cosmic entity to new planets to devour with a beacon from his surfboard. It was revealed that the surfer wasn't truly a villain, only serving Galactus as a way of keeping his own home safe. In reality, he was a hero really, just from the perspective of his planet and people. Though in uniting with the titular team and sacrificing himself to destroy his boss, he was actually a hero to all mankind in the end. In the post-credits scene, the surfer was revealed to still be alive and floating through space. And with a title like Rise of the Silver Surfer, it's not hard to picture the spin-off franchise with the hero at the forefront that could have been, had it not been for Fox's decision to eventually reboot the entire Fantastic Four property. But let's not talk about that movie, eh? Number 8, Dr. Corley, Shutter Island. Martin Scorsese and Leonardo DiCaprio have collaborated on a ridiculous 6 major motion pictures. And arguably the most underrated of the bunch is Shutter Island, a chilling piece that keeps the audience guessing right up until the final moments and beyond. The story revolves around DiCaprio's Teddy Daniels, a US Marshal brought to an institution for the criminally insane to investigate a missing prisoner. The asylum, located on its own remote island off the coast of Boston, is home only to the most brutal and dangerous of criminals, one of whom it turns out is actually Daniels himself. Throughout the film, the Marshal is constantly hampered by the hospital's leading physician, Dr. John Corley, who apparently experiments on his patients and lobotomizes them. All was not what it seemed at Ashcliffe Hospital, but no one watching could have guessed that DiCaprio's character was actually a resident named Andrew Ladis, and that Corley leaned into his Teddy Daniels persona as a way of trying to make a breakthrough. Ladis murdered his wife after she killed their 3 children, and in his grief invented Teddy Daniels, terrorizing the other patients on the island. Dr. Corley was genuinely trying to help his patient, though of course stopping short of giving him confidential records, something that was mistook for something mistrustful. And as for the lobotomies, well, these were only for those deemed beyond any other means of help, and dangerous enough to warrant them. Man, I need to watch this movie again, I love it. Number 7, Godzilla from 2014. Though Roland Emmerich's Godzilla from 1998 was unable to capture the imagination of the cinema-going public, there was at one point a plan for a sequel that would have seen the monster's offspring become a hero. This was to be redemption for not giving Godzilla this treatment in the first movie. When the franchise was rebooted in 2014, however, there was to be no such a mission. Initially, Godzilla was naturally to be treated as the threat to the world he could have been. Nuclear bombs were deployed to try and kill him upon his discovery in 1954. Though he survived, living happily deep under the ocean until another Muto made itself known in 2014. Essentially responding to its instincts as the top monster on the food chain, Godzilla confronted this new Muto, and it's easy to see why he was so feared and why the government wanted him dead. In just turning up, he caused a massive tsunami in Hawaii, and at first there was no reason to differentiate him from the other monsters running amok across the globe. The military planned to lure all of them together with a nuclear bomb and kill them with the force of the blast. But ultimately it was Godzilla who defeated the other two Mutos, before heading back into the ocean where he hadn't bothered a soul for 6 decades. He saved the entire planet and was rightly hailed as the king of the monsters. Number 6, Agent Dylan Rhodes, Now You See Me. Dylan Rhodes was an FBI agent trying to track down and stop the 4 Horsemen. But because the law-breaking magicians were painted as the protagonists, technically Mark Ruffalo's character was represented as the villain. The group were brought together initially by a mysterious benefactor, and they ultimately began a Robin Hood-esque journey of stealing from the rich and giving back to the poor. They robbed banks and stole from millionaires, and passed the money back to those who had been wronged. Throughout the movie, while Mark Ruffalo's Agent Rhodes chased down the foursome with a passion, the identity of the benefactor remained anonymous. However, nobody imagined the one that was pulling the strings all along was Rhodes himself. He was behind bringing the Horsemen together in the first place, and welcomed them into the Eye, a secret society of magicians at the end of the film, before having his own secret revealed to the world in the sequel. Part of the reason why no one saw this coming is because it made little to absolutely no sense, and felt like it was just a twist for the sake of a twist, really. But still, it completely changed the way Now You See Me can be watched, and firmly planted Rhodes in the camp of the good guys. Cheers for checking out this video today, folks. Now go and smash that subscribe button down below for more of these fascinating chunks of what culture in your day. Number 5, Gary Game Night. Jesse Plemons is one of those actors who just seems to make better everything he appears in. And with Game Night, this is no different, baby. His officer, Gary Kingsbury, lived next door to Max and Annie, and used to partake in their game nights until he and his wife got divorced. Since then, he was left out, being described as RoboCop, and the creepy husband that they had to put up with. In fairness, Gary was portrayed as incredibly creepy, painfully intense, and a bit awkward. And it's easy to see why the group were made uncomfortable by him and why they excluded him. However, in spite of how he presented himself and how he was made to be a pariah, Gary never actually did anything wrong. In fact, he was just a lonely guy who wanted to spend time with his best friends. In the midst of the ridiculous story that saw the group get involved in Brooke's criminal life, Gary showed what a good laugh he could be by setting them up with fake bad guys and pretending to be shot, though he was then actually shot by real bad guys. He survived though and was rightly included in game nights going forward. What a happy ending, eh? Number 4, Mr. Orange, Reservoir Dogs. Quentin Tarantino's first feature film effort is still widely regarded as one of his best even all these years later. Reservoir Dogs is iconic and includes an incredible twist surrounding who the rat in the group is. When a handful of criminals came together to rob a diamond store, they were mobbed by police far quicker than should have been possible. It soon became clear that one of the strangers was a rat, with the identity being kept even from the audience until around an hour into the movie. Mr. White and Mr. Pink agreed that it could have been anyone, though the former vehemently defended Tim Roth's Mr. Orange, the man who had been shot in the stomach and was on death's door. White even killed Joe and nice guy Eddie fighting the corner of Orange, but ended up with blood on his hands and egg on his face when the young man admitted to being a cop. Though this betrayal made Orange the bad guy in the eyes of the likes of Mr. White and Mr. Pink, these were unmitigated criminals and killers. The fact that he betrayed them and had been working for the police all along firmly portrays Mr. Orange as actually one of the good guys, in a strange reversal of Dylan Rhodes' situation in Now You See Me. Number 3, Hector Coco. Over the years, Pixar has made a habit of producing incredibly emotional movies that tackle heavy themes. all while looking visually outstanding. 2017's Coco may be the epitome of both of these aspects, as it followed young Miguel through the land of the dead on El Dia de los Muertos. Miguel, a prospering musician coming from a family with a deep hatred of music, sought his great-great-grandfather, who just so happened to be Ernesto de la Cruz, the greatest musician of all time in the land of the dead. He managed to enlist the help of Hector, a lovable rascal who was ultimately revealed to be Miguel's true great-great-grandfather. Hector was the reason his entire family hated music, as while out on tour with De La Cruz, Hector left Miguel's great-great-grandmother Imelda to look after their daughter. When he never returned, she swore off music forever. He had been portrayed as the villain of the family for generations, and his face was ripped out of their family picture, meaning he couldn't cross the bridge to the land of the living. However, Hector did actually try and get home. Painfully homesick, he planned on leaving De La Cruz to return to his family, but was murdered before he had the chance. Ernesto de la Cruz was the true villain here, not Hector. Number 2, Plutarch Heavensbee, The Hunger Games Catching Fire. There was no shortage of evil characters in the Hunger Games franchise, such as Donald Sutherland's President Snow and subsequently Julianne Moore's President Coin. However, the rulers of Panem weren't the only villains, as there were the head game makers who actually designed each year's Hunger Games events, and whose efforts would lead to the deaths of 23 children. After Seneca Crane failed, allowing joint victors in the 74th Hunger Games, he was murdered by President Snow and replaced with Philip Seymour Hoffman's Plutarch Heavensbee. Though there were subtle clues to the new game maker's true allegiances, telling Katniss she inspired him and dressing like a normal person unlike anyone else in the capital, this was not revealed until the very end of the Hunger Games Catching Fire. Plutarch was essentially a double agent and played his role perfectly. He gained President Snow's trust, he convinced him not to outright murder Katniss, and he helped her survive in the arena. It was he who led the district's rebellion from within. While acting as Snow's number 2, unbeknownst to the audience at the time, Heavensbee built a rebellion undercover with half of the tributes of the Quarter Quell informed, with the main aim being to get Katniss out alive. From there, he was a valuable and irreplaceable weapon against the Capitol as a leader in the rebellion. Number 1, Agent Lorenzo Zoil, Paul. Though it may not be a part of the Cornetto trilogy, Paul is a fun outing starring Simon Pegg and Nick Frost, with a genuinely staggering supporting cast including Seth Rogen, Kristen Wiig, Bill Hader, Joe Latruglio, Sigourney Weaver, and Jason Bateman. The last one of those people there played Lorenzo Zoil, an FBI agent who chased Graham, Clive, and their extraterrestrial hitchhiker Paul across the American Southwest, with Weaver as his mysterious boss, the big guy, and Hader and Latruglio as his incompetent assistants. Zoil came across as a ruthless man willing to do anything to catch up with Paul. While this was true, he was only acting the part in order to keep the big guy off the aliens' tracks. Just as Weaver's character confronted the movie's protagonist, Bateman showed up and began shooting at her and her henchmen. It turns out that Zoil was good friends with Paul, with the alien even introducing him to his wife. How sweet. The FBI man missed their rendezvous and was playing catch-up ever since, in what was a genuinely surprising and rather enjoyable twist. You'll love to see it.